And then, so we'll be down to four facilities then, the headquarters, Payne, Lakeside, and Broadway.
Correct.
So we went from 1 to 4. So the question really gets to be around cost and assessment. And we still don't know the final estimates for the new headquarters, nor do we own all the land yet. But we went from 58 million on our original estimates. We're up to 120 million now for the new facility.
I'd have to receive an update. I was prepared to talk about South High School. I would have to get an update on,
Okay,
on the new
so I'm trying
headquarters.
to look at the global picture and what our commitment is for the next 50 years of
Sure.
how much indebtedness we have for the city. The estimates for Payne were around 12 million. Do we know that yet, or?
To the chairman, to the committee, that's a pretty accurate estimate. It was a ballpark estimate, but that's pretty accurate.
And the estimates for Lakeside is at about 14 million, I think is is it 22 million? I'm looking at.
To the chair, to the committee, I don't have that exact number.
Okay.
And we are looking just at headquarters. I'm part of the steering committee. We're looking at 107 million.
Okay. And in South High, we don't have an assessment done yet. Is that correct?
To the chair, to the committee, the assessment's not complete, and so we're looking at renovation costs. And one of the things that we have learned, our new construction costs are coming in at about $600 a square foot right now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's the price of lumber and everything. And renovation costs are about $125 a square foot. So we're hoping to come in considerably lower.
And you said new construction was coming in at about what?
Right now, they're estimating the new headquarters at $600 per square foot.
And rehab was about 120, you said?
And renovation's about $125 per square foot in Cleveland currently.
Yeah, that's, I appreciate you acknowledging that. When the capital projects director was here and justifying the new headquarters, when we were looking at South High as a potential new headquarters, he said South High was beyond a condition that they can repair reasonably. He stated that the cost of renovating was in excess of the return. So I think this, and that's why South High evidently was taken off the table as a consideration for the headquarters.
Well, Councilman, Chair to the Councilman, I think that part of that was because South High School being transformed into a police headquarters, into a training facility, poses different costs, different needs. But for it to be a school to be transformed into another education facility, the changes to that building would not have to be as substantial. Because because it's basically updating classrooms for classes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less modifications, less needed modifications to that building for a training facility than for a headquarters.
Yeah, I would argue different, my experience in construction. At this point, and do we have any, through the chair, do we have any drawings or a use plan yet for the facility?
We do. We have, well, it's rough. We have it how it's to be carved out for the school, for CMSD, which would be on the second floor, and how it would be carved out on the first floor for police, fire, and EMS. And then a space separately carved out for an anticipated training for emergency dispatchers.
And is that available to us, to the chair?
Yeah, we can get that to council.
Okay. And previously, through the chair, Director, you had stated when we were looking at alternative uses within that school and opening up the library and making the gym available to the public, there was a concern around homeland security and the safety, but now you're entertaining a lease back from CMSD to let students in there. How has that changed, that now having students in there is different than previously?
So, well, it was always part of it to have a space carved out for CMSD. That was always in the planning. With regard to shared use of the building, we contemplated, because the swimming pool is over on the Stella Walsh side, we would utilize the swimming pool for water rescue, water training. In exchange for that, partnering with Public Works would allow the use of the basketball courts, some use of the gym, and then the larger library area for community meetings at times when there would not be any type of public safety training happening.
So there is an opportunity to look at the library for alternative uses?
It depends on what the alternative uses are. As long as those alternative uses align with it being a secured public training safety facility, those, I don't want to get into speculative discussion, but if for we contemplated community meetings, and that was the only discussion that we had with regard to that space.
Okay, so when we did the tour, we talked specifically about having the library have, much like they share facilities in other parts of the city, the library needing additional space. The school does lend itself already to be closed off and keep secure. There's gates, it's built in wings, it's built very specifically that it can be sectioned off without opening up the entire school. We can have that discussion as we move forward, but I think, not seeing your facilities plan to see what all your needs are and how it fits into that building. There was a tour of the Columbus facility, which was a $25 million facility in Columbus, which is incredibly exciting, but seeing how that fits and how that lays out to this facility is incredibly important, and what the space needs are.
Well, so yeah, the Columbus facility, the cost is correct. It was built from scratch about 10 years ago in a much different economic environment with regard to labor and materials. The Columbus facility, they don't have they don't open it up to the public. I think that's
it's more of the cost identification.
Yeah, I think that when we brought up mixed use of different other city facilities, is that it just has to be kept in mind that a public safety training facility is unique from any other buildings that are in the city.
And I think through the chair, you had stated that there's a fall class that you're looking at, a fall class.
We were looking to try to get a police class in there in December. That we won't be able to do it, underneath the timelines that we're on now. But hopefully if we can get into that building, to have a class in there first quarter, late first quarter, early second quarter would probably be more.
Right now, where would the scheduled fall class then train?
The scheduled fall class, we're vetting that class now, so we don't know what that number is. Without knowing that number, it's difficult to determine whether or not we would have to reach out to Tri-C again, or if it would be a number that we could facilitate in the Justice Center.
So I heard the number that you were projecting was 65.
Right. But we can project that number, but as we go through background checks and we go, yeah. So I don't want to get locked into a hard number.
Well, we budgeted for 65.
Yes.
And life would be great if we hit 65. We're not going to hit 400. But that's, in the best case scenario of 65, if we were able to hit that number, that's what we'd be looking for.
So 65, I would have to have, DC Fay could probably speak to that better about where that 65 would go, whether it would be at the Justice Center or Tri-C.
Okay.
I would defer to him.
Okay. So the bigger concern, has there been an update through the chair on to the project group on all the facilities?
To the chair, to the committee, I do not have a recent update on all the facilities, no.
Okay. What I would recommend, we're starting, these numbers continue to grow. This is between our headquarters and then these three facilities. We're not talking remodeling, make-ready numbers. These are millions of dollars. I would like to see if we can hold this until we get the assessment to know what dollars we're dealing with. and get the plans and have a better understanding instead of transferring immediately and not knowing what the costs are.
Okay. All right, to the director. We do need a little bit more information. We're kind of working in the blind on this. If we can, you can get those numbers back to us today. Okay.
Yes, Chair.
All right. All right. Mr. Brackatelli, are you done with your questions?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Brackatelli. Councilman Joe Jones.
Mr. Chairman, looking at this, I know that, we're in a space right now where we certainly need more clarification, but we are down and our EMS workers, and if the director could tell us a little bit more, why are we not where we need to be in terms of the employees at EMS?
So it's attrition. Folks coming on, receiving the training and leaving. Folks leaving for other jurisdictions, private ambulatory services. It's filling the gap that we had last year. We just have to. Again, it goes towards recruitment, getting people on, and then holding folks to stay after they receive the training. We will take people on without any experience into EMTs and train them to be EMTs. That is something that when we bring those folks on and we train and we expect them to stay. Some folks would come on and get that training, become certified EMTs, and then depart the city.
And currently, Mr. Chairman, to the director, where are they having these training courses currently?
So right now we have the EMTs being trained over at the Huntington facility because it's a larger class. But if it weren't a larger class, it would be over at the at Lakeside at EMS headquarters.
It'll be where?
EMS headquarters on Lakeside.
Okay. So you have a site for it already?
I'm sorry,
You have a site location within your own structure to train them currently right now?
Yes.
And how many, Mr. Chairman, EMS workers are we down in the city of Cleveland?
I believe we're approximately 40. I can give you that exact number, but off the top, the last time we did an assessment, we were down 40 folks for EMTs and paramedics.
I see. And how does that impact our service delivery?
We have overtime to staff the trucks. We do dynamic deployment to make sure that the entire city is covered. Once we recover and fill those vacancies, overtime will be reduced, and regular operation, regular deployment would resume.
I see. And, Mr. Chairman, to the safety director, the proposed site here at the school will train EMS workers, and who else would be firefighters?
It would train EMS workers, firefighters, and police. And also what I would like to add is that by adding the partnership with CMSD is that high school students would graduate as certified EMTs, so they would be able to come on, with that training and would help, possibly expedite that training process. So it's the change with regard to training that hadn't been, that I don't know if it had been contemplated, but had definitely been, deeply considered and discussed, is this idea of having a public safety pipeline, thinking about not just filling the divisions next year, but what does it look like with solving staffing issues for the long term? What does it look like with solving diversity issues for the long term? And with that pipeline at high school students and CMSD, this cadet program of 18, 26-year-old creates a flow pipeline right into public safety. And then even to be able to reach back further is to have some of those cadets to speak to young people when really they're at the age that we lose them, 7th and 8th grade, to spark that interest. And then to have summer programming like CPR training, regular interaction and communication with some of our uniformed public safety service members to keep that interest alive and energized. We know without question that the streets also gets these kids at 7th and 8th grade. It's a crime reduction It's a personnel issue. A pipeline into public safety, as young as we can get them all the way through, I can't tell you how important that is, Councilman.
And Mr. Chairman, I mean, so basically what we're talking about is creating an actual facility that will be a pipeline to young people coming out of Cleveland Public Schools?
Yes.
What we're talking about here? And then how long has this building been abandoned? Is it 13 years?
11 years, I believe.
11 years? So, Mr. Chairman, is there any future with any kind of propositions being put forth for the use of this building other than what we're talking about now?
None that I know of.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Brackatelli, is there any uses that are, that we're talking about future, wise, putting there at that facility? Is any kind of vision in your mind that that site could be used for other than what's being proposed right now?
This particular facility, the proposal for safety courses is just an amazing academy use. Fully supported. Talk to residents, talk to our block clubs and our civic groups, and our community leaders. They're really excited about this opportunity. I think, as the safety director stated, being able to have this both as a world-class facility, not just for our teams, but also for outside municipalities, being able to keep and recruit these young kids, as the safety director pointed out, is critically important. We cannot continue to lose our residents to other municipalities and other cities. When they go out to training, whether it's to Columbus or these others, it's like a recruiting hall down there. I think having a place located in the city and walking through it, DC Hennessy and his team through the first walkthroughs, I think it's just an amazing opportunity to have this in the heart of our city to both recruit young kids, get them early, as the safety director said, and get them to stay in the city of Cleveland. So it's a great location for this, and based on its location, nearness to the highway, nearness to public transportation, and its proximity and how it has great borders, it works ideally for that.
Mr. Chairman, listening to what the director is talking about on this particular project, and just want to get a little bit more granular real quick, just touch in base there. How much space do you need from reading the actual legislation, you're not talking about using all of the space here, is that correct, Mr. Chairman, to the director? Or
No,
are you?
that's correct, Chair, to the councilman, is that we were talking about renovating and updating the space that we would allocate. The building is about 175,000 square feet. The police training academy in Columbus is about 175,000 square feet. The fire training academy, a separate facility in Columbus, is about 175,000 square feet. They are on the verge of, outgrowing those facilities. We have our police, fire, and EMS in much smaller spaces now. The space that's carved out for the academy class for police, fire, and EMS, it separates them. So when you think about, and like I said, we'll get the drawings to council. When you think about the space that we're going to use for police, fire, and EMS, and the space for CMSD, is that there's room for us to grow in that building. I'm not saying that we won't eventually outgrow that building, but it's not going to be in any time soon. We can do active shooter training. We can do scenario training. We can do. Columbus has the hand-to-hand boxing and wrestling, which is proven to reduce officers reaching for their firearms because they can handle themselves if they need to. So in short, to answer your question, is that the carved out space and the space that we see to renovate, it is not the entire 175,000 square feet at this time.
And Mr. Chairman, what is I know that my colleague talked about the numbers. What are we looking at in terms of the projected costs of getting in there right away, getting it started, getting it up, and what is the timeline of being able to get that going?
Those initially, when we planned to get the police class in there in December, we were hoping to get started in June with renovating the classroom space that we would need to do for police. And while the police academy was in there preparing for a fire class, January, February. So it's flooring, paint, installing equipment, the technical items, and then continuing to renovate the space that we would need for these classes. So it would have been a matter of 6 months, which would be a tight timeline. But I am a fan of, tell me if it's impossible, or tell me if it's difficult. If it's difficult, we can get it. We can get it done. You just have to keep pressure applied. So that would have been a tight timeline, but I do believe that we would have made. I would have been very confident that if we were renovating in June, we would have had a police class in there in December.
And that's moving forward right now. Granted that we get all the information to the table on numbers.
Yes. So if we say we started in November, December, January, February, March, April, May, looking at having a police class in there in April, May, that timeline.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have full faith in this director. I think he's an outstanding director. And I really appreciate the fact that every time he comes to the table, he's a straight shooter and he tells us like it is. So I really appreciate your leadership, Director. And I think that what's really important that we've been campaigning in a sense at the table is that building that stable relationship with CMSD students, supplying a stable of people who will come in and be our future workers in EMS, fire, and police department. So really appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I have no unreadiness. I'm in full throttle support of this, and I look forward to seeing it move faster than being moved slower. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director or Director DeRosa, it looks like, according to the legislation, the cost of this is $435,000, correct?
Through the chairman of the councilman, so the appraised value of the property is $435,000, and so the way that it works is that if we make improvements into the building up to that amount of money, then there would be no payment to CMSD for that purchase price. And in the way that that's set up is really a function of this sale and leaseback provision that we're operating under.
Correct. So we know that it's going to cost more than $435,000 to rehab it. So basically, CMSD is swapping the building to us for us to rehab the building, and then the building becomes property of the city of Cleveland. However, CMSD then has the option to lease back, I think it's 6 classrooms, correct? They're going to be leasing six
classrooms, and then there's some common space for the cafeteria. Yes.
So it only says 6 classrooms.
6
in here.
classrooms.
Right. So CMSD, do we know what CMSD, Mr. Chairman, to the director, will be paying to lease back?
Through the chairman, yes. So the first year, the way that we've negotiated this, the first year CMSD would pay for all of the operating costs of the full facility, as they currently do, except we'll be doing our renovations during that time as well. That gives them time to completely take all of their personal property out of the building. They have a trades department there currently. They have records retention there currently. So that's the first year. And then after that, CMSD only pays the percent of utilities that relates to their percent of the use of the building. So that 6 classrooms, the cafeteria, et cetera, would equate to a percent of the total building, which they would pay operating costs for.
All right, and this, Mr. Chairman, to the director, is over 20 years, correct? So
Correct.
they're paying, their first year, they're only paying for the operation of the 6 classrooms and just a little bit of whatever cafeteria or whatever.
Right.
And that's just for utilities, correct?
Excuse me. So, Mr. Chairman and the councilman, so the first year they pay 100% of all of the operating costs for the entire property.
Okay.
Cut the grass, pay the electric, everything for that entire building for the first year.
Okay.
After that, their percent is about maybe 5% of the total facility. So after that first year, they would pay the operating costs, which is basically utilities, for 5% of the building, 5% of the operating costs to equate to 5% of their use of the building.
And then it comes down by 5% every year, correct?
No, it would stay consistent because their use would be the 6 classrooms and the ancillary space, which equates to approximately 5% of the building.
All right, so then after we're done probably spending upwards to $7, $8, $9 million to rehab the property, it's our property, we're leasing back only 6 classrooms to CMSD, and then they're paying 5%. Once it's all rehabbed, they're paying 5% of the operating cost, which is basically just the utilities, correct?
Through the chairman of the councilman, that's correct. And basically what this structure does is it obviates the need for us to pay $435,000 to CMSD to purchase the facility.
Right, so basically, in a nutshell, for us rehabbing the building, they're giving it to us, because the rehab's going to be more than the value of the building.
You'd be, in a nutshell, correct.
Through the chairman and the councilman, yeah. And specifically, there's Ohio Revised Code that requires
Right.
that these improvements would benefit their students. So anything from, a new roof to the HVAC system to painting the walls of those actual classrooms, all of that would qualify as going towards the benefit of the students that would be in that facility.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, to Director DeRosa, speaking of the Ohio Revised Code, was South High School put on the market at all? Was it put up for sale?
Through the chairman to the councilman, no, it was not put up for sale, although I believe it was offered to charter schools.
Was it, that was the second question. Was it offered to charter schools? So it
and
has
I-
not been offered to charter schools.
And
Does it
that's-
have, I don't know the specific, maybe the attorney can come up and, it doesn't need to be? Okay, we'll let them talk.
Would you prefer to mask off so you can
Yeah.
hear me better? Yeah, we're invoking a statute, which is 9.483 of the code, which basically creates an exception for this transaction. We frequently use 331340 with the city, which allows for land swaps. This statute allows for the sale of the building on whatever terms the parties agree, as long as a portion is leased back to the school district and certain improvements are made. And so that's the statute we're using, and the lead into that statute says very specifically, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a political subdivision. So the city could invoke that statute as well if you had a facility that you wanted to sell and then lease back a portion. So there's no issue with charter schools or anything else. This statute trumps all those laws.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to get caught up later on in some legal manner because the charter school doesn't. And then, Mr. Chairman, to whomever from CMSD, those 6 classrooms, do you know what they're going to be used for? And I don't want to hear from the director saying that we're going to, because we can't constantly, Ms. Chobe maybe, we can't constantly keep a 24-year-old in school. So,
Oh,
do
it
they
would,
do the 26 rights?
that wouldn't be in that space at all anyway.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Chobe, if you could tell us what CMSD wants to use those 6 classrooms for.
So, good morning, committee members and chair to the councilman. The current criminal justice program that the district operates was relocated from Martin Luther King High School a year ago after that building was taken out of service and became part of a series of real estate opportunities for people to reinvest in the building. We've been working with the city and the mayor's office on that. The program was relocated to Glenville. There were some improvements made there to allow for career pathing through the career tech education program the district operates. The idea of creating the career pathway, and I think Director Howard mentioned this earlier, is to use other opportunities like the Say Yes programming, the True to You mentoring, summer programming through Youth Opportunities Unlimited, the ROTC Junior program, to create awareness among our middle school students so that they would then career path to the program through the Glenville High School program. And then as they become more clearly committed to taking a EMT, fire, or police career path. In their junior and senior year, they would be using the facility in partnership with the city. So these are going to be students who have had time to think about it, have committed to it, would have taken some introductory and intermediate classes before they're actually getting into the training academy as serious, potential cadets.
Okay, so we could have a potential, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Chobe, we'll just say upwards to 120 CMSD students, if you're doing, we'll just say 20 per classroom. 120 CMSD students in this training facility while the city is training police, fire, and EMS.
I think on average, given the enrollment that we have in these career tech programs, you would probably have between 80 and 100.
All right. I would just want 20 kids to a classroom. I don't know. All right. Thank you. And then one last thing, Mr. Chairman, to Director Howard. You had mentioned that we have 80 cadets currently at Tri-C. How are those broken down?
Broken demographics, is that what you're asking?
No.
Or broken down
Police,
how?
fire, EMS.
Oh, no, the cadets that are at Tri-C, those are police.
Are you saying, sitting here now, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, that we have 80 cadets in this class for Tri-C?
DC Fab, was that correct? How many of the cadets in the Tri-C class? Okay, so it's approximately 60 right now. The last number that I had was 80, but
Okay.
some folks
I
don't.
never heard 80, so
Some folks don't make it all the way through.
Right, no, I get that. I thought 80 was a little high, so I'm just making sure that, because we don't want to hear you say 80 now and then we only graduate 50-something or something, but I believe that the class started at about 64, I think, 65, something like that, and we're down to 60, right around 60. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Sure.
it was 60 and not 80. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. So what would we do with the existing fire academy? What would happen to that premises?
So the existing fire academy would be used for the more dangerous type of training, so we don't bring smoke into the community. We have hopefully the propane props. We have the fire tower. We have the IFF training trailer. So that we don't bring. I don't want to bring smoke and fumes into the neighborhood. So the fire training academy would be used there, and then we can further look into doing our continuing education at the fire training academy.
Okay, that was my question. I don't know if you were moving that to south or, so you're going to hold on to that purposes. Now, there's an EMT location too. Is that right near the fire academy?
Yes, actually, it's near 2100 Lakeside, right next to the FBI building.
So would we no longer need that?
Well, again, that would be used for continuing training. So there's benefit in separating brand new, fresh cadets from already uniformed members going through continuing education training. So we would still use that space. That space, if I don't know if you've been there, Councilman.
Not EMS, no.
Okay.
Fire I have.
So if you look at the training space, it's a significant space, but really it's also doubled as storage. Right, so we can repurpose that space in the EMS headquarters for the continuing education, but separate them from the fresh cadets.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my only question.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a quick follow-up.
All right, go ahead, Councilman Brackettag.
Thank you. It was through the chairman to the safety director. You had mentioned there was $3 million set aside already. Did you identify the source of that $3 million? Was that in our original bond, the second bond we did for the headquarters?
I believe so. I would confer with finance about the actual source, but I believe that was.
Okay, if we can just confirm where that's at. And if I can, Mr. Chairman, City Council has hired its consultant to work closely with this project, the project group. If we can get an update, if the information can be provided to the project group with an updated costs, which include Lakeside paying, as well as South High School, all those projects, which is under our contract with the project group, which is being managed through your contractor.
Sure.
Okay. All right, Director will hold this piece till we get that information back.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you. Yeah, he should be out there, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, as people are coming in, it was brought to my attention my mic wasn't on when I was responding to Councilman Jones. But I just want to reiterate our community full support on this project. We did talk to our neighborhood organizations, our civic groups, the local CDC. The local CDC went on a tour in Columbus. This is an exciting opportunity to have our safety forces get training in the city of Cleveland, an exciting opportunity for both recruitment. Recruitment's been incredibly hard throughout the United States. And here we're looking at the chance to be able to retain, attract and retain these students, keep people in Cleveland, not when they go down to training in Columbus and they get recruited out to other cities and other municipalities. This is a great opportunity for our community and a great opportunity for reuse for South High School.
Sure is, yeah. All right, our next piece of legislation, ordinance number 683, 2021 by council members Bishop, Brackatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to apply for and accept funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation for preliminary alternative study of Lakefront pedestrian bridge, authorizing the director to apply for and accept grants, gifts, grants, and other funding from other entities to enter into a contract with Osborne Engineering Company for traffic modeling and engineering services, authorizing other agreements, and authorizing the Commissioner of Purchase and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record for the right-of-way purposes for real property and easements. Okay, Director?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and just a moment, I wanted to introduce Meredith Carey. She's with my department. She's our new legislation liaison. So I wanted to bring her up here today so she can see how we do committee hearings.
Okay, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yeah, this project will provide.
Director, can you talk into the, we can't hardly hear you. Can you talk into the mic?
Can you hear me now? Is that good? Okay. This project will provide enhanced pedestrian access to the lakefront connecting downtown Cleveland and leverage a cohesive and open city grid and create sites for economic development. The land bridge with surrounding infrastructure improvements will separate pedestrian and vehicle movements. The project will investigate alternatives to safe pedestrian and vehicle access to lakefront that could impact current public right-of-way, such as State Route 2, Erie Side Avenue, West 3rd Street, East 9th Street, and Lakeside Avenue. Osborne Engineering Company was part of the group of architects, engineers, and planners under contract with a private entity that performed the conceptual development and access programming to the lakefront. The lakefront vision plan was developed from June of 2019 to present, and it was presented to the Planning Commission and to City Council on May 17th, 2021. Osborne Engineering Company was the lead transportation, bridge, and traffic consulting during the development of the plan, which includes the pedestrian bridge connector. Osborne has assembled a well-qualified group of sub-consultants in the fields of land survey, land acquisition, environmental services, geotechnical services, utility, underground investigation, rail transit, and structure to further develop the lakefront pedestrian connector. The funding for this is $5 million, the estimated cost for the study, of which $2.5 million is from ODOT Jobs and Commerce Grant, and $2.5 million will be from City of Cleveland Road and Bridge bonds. The study and the preliminary design effort here will start in November of this year and should be completed in December of 2022.
Okay, Director. Now, the group that you mentioned here, the Osborne Engineering Company, who actually chose that engineering company?
So as it states here, Councilman, Chairman, Osborne Engineering has been working on the project since its conception. So in order to expedite in the most cost-effective and schedule-effective manner, this ordinance is, being requested of council to allow for direct, what we call a direct award to Osborne Engineering to continue their efforts for this project.
Okay. And have your office presented this bridge to the council? Have you presented this to us?
Yeah, in May of 17, 2021, the council was presented with the concept plan. If you recall, it's that the planning director, I think, was here, Chief Ripka, presented the concept plan for the downtown connector and the whole kind of redevelopment of the lakefront area. There is a drawing in your ordinance here that shows that. But yeah, that whole concept plan went through council previously in May.
Okay.
Shows the connector and then how the whole Browns campus and that whole lakefront area is going to be redevelopment.
Now, what committees was this presented to, Director Sprons?
What committee? I don't recall each and every committee that was presented, but I know it did go through council. Yeah. I'm sure that's on the record somewhere. They could find the record.
Say planning
Okay.
commission.
All right. And this, and the $5 million, where is that coming from?
So yeah, the $5 million is the city and was successful in getting a $2.5 million ODOT Jobs and Commerce grant. So that funds will be coming from a grant from the state of Ohio, and then $2.5 million in road and bridge bonds would be authorized by this ordinance.
Okay.
As a local share. So our local share, it's a 50-50 grant. So half the money from the state, half the money from the municipality.
Okay. All right. I want to open this up to questions from my colleagues. All right, Councilman Jones.
Yes, sir. So it's basically the mall. It will be extended across the mall right to your right here. Yeah. So it's this whole mall area will be extended across to the north, straight north, full width of the mall will be extended north across the tracks. Oh, no, right there. Right there. Exactly. Yes, yeah, that's it. Yes, sir. Yep.
And so you have how many council members that this is going to be? Is this the only bridge? This is the bridge that the Browns talked about?
Correct.
So this is what we're talking about here.
Yes, sir.
And so we're going to spend $2.5 million from the city in terms of bonds, and then another $2.5 million from the state?
That's correct.
And that's just to get the engineering process up and started?
Correct. Yeah, they'll do a traffic study and a feasibility study to figure out, how it would impact the city if we did this. They'll do a modeling, and they'll look at multiple scenarios, probably like 6 or 7 different scenarios.
And at the end of the day, when you've done the engineering and feasibility study, what is the projected cost of the bridge?
That would be part of the study to figure out. No one's actually come up with a complete feasibility study for the cost, as far as I know.
So right now, what we're looking at is, make sure I pull up Siri because she likes to get ahead of her system. So, but right now, I know that there was a projection estimated cost. What was that projected estimated cost that was given to us initially?
To the chair of the council, I don't recall. I don't recall that cost. If there is one, I could probably try to find that document and get it to you, but I don't recall a cost.
Idea how much this bridge may cost us after we do this study? No general preliminary estimate or anything, Mr. Chairman?
I don't recall anybody. I never saw it. I personally never saw a cost for it.
Mr. Chairman, could the bridge possibly cost us? Mr. Chairman, can the bridge actually cost more than $100 million?
Through the chair to the council, I have no idea. I don't know.
So you wouldn't have any idea if it would cost 200 or 300 or 400 million?
To the chair of the council, that's part of what the study's going to figure
I
out.
understand.
We're going to figure out how, if it can work, and then how much it would cost, what would be the best way to kind of tackle it, whether it's done in phases or...
So who pays for it, Mr. Chairman?
Who pays for what?
Once you come up with how much it costs. If it's a $100 million bridge, who pays for it?
Through the chair, Councilman, I don't think that's been determined yet, like how that would be paid for, whether that would be through federal funds or through state funds or through private funds or through municipal funds or county funds. So there would have to be some type of funding strategy put together, like we do on most large projects where, you know, different stakeholders would be putting in money to get to the goal of the project.
Mr.
So there
Chairman,
would
you
be-
talked about economic development. How could that help the city economically? What are you putting or crafting around this particular project? Because you got a study to link the, you know, the stadium site to this location. Is there any other plans
Well,
to create some kind of economic development around
yeah,
this?
so this would allow, you know, for the reconfiguration of the bridge and the traffic, will allow for that area out in the lakefront area as presented previously to council by Chief Ripka and the economic development team on how that would be able to grow that area. So that it'd be able to prepare building pads and building sites with the infrastructure there so that those things could happen out there. Because there's no infrastructure there now, you know, to allow for that to occur. So all that'll be able to facilitate infrastructure improvements. So just this preliminary engineering study will start that process. This is the first step in multiple steps to figure out answers to all these all these questions. Like, can it be done? How much will it cost? How big will it be? How long will it take? How's it going to get funded? All that stuff, that's what we're beginning to figure out. So as we get those answers, we'll bring them to council.
One of my concerns, Mr. Chairman, is we're doing this feasibility study to build a link between this space here and down to the lakefront. And then in our document, it talks about economic development, you know. And when we talk about economic development and starting a project, what I thought in my mind, it was at least, are we building any kind of new building, new businesses? Will it generate and facilitate excitement around that space?
Through the chair to Councilman, yeah, eventually it will lead to that, to the development of all those things that Chief Ripka had presented in the master plan, which is different buildings down there like a hotel or office buildings or mixed-use buildings, and that whole development of the lakefront. I think if you look at the drawing, you'll see all those areas kind of identified.
When you say areas, are you talking about what's in red or yellow?
Yeah, so you can see, you know, like along the eastern portion of the bulkhead here will be a public park. You know, here these parcels here will be, I think there are some type of mixed-use buildings, some parking structures underground most likely, so that the above-ground space can be used for mixed use, which might be, you know, retail or tenants or even housing of some sort. So all those kind of things will be put on these parcels here once we get the infrastructure put in for it.
So we're just asking permission right now to spend the $2.5 million on our side to get the study going.
That's correct. Yeah, this will be a long project. This will take many years. It's not going to happen. Many years and many more council meetings and many more pieces of legislation and all that will have to come back. You know, the results of this report will have to come back to this body to consider. So,
can you explain, Mr. Chairman, to the director, the second map, it has a red zone in it. Can you explain that map and what it means here to this?
oh, that's just a study area. So that's the area that the traffic study is going to look at. So that's the limits of the study area. So they'll look at all the traffic movements and all the impacts in that region, you know, if we were to put this bridge there, how it impacts the flow of traffic and, you know, and all that in the community in that area. So that's part of the study area, yeah.
And could there be another possibility of another bridge established, you know, similar to this somewhere down within that study area?
Will they look at a different bridge scenario?
Correct.
Well, that would be a separate study. So if they change bridge types or bridge locations, which would, I don't know where they would put it. It would have to be somewhere along this corridor right here. They would then change the study limits, yeah. But those study limits would pretty much be comprehensive for any type of bridge, whether it's put, on this side of the mall, or we had a previous bridge that was a little bit to the east of that. It was just on one portion of it. That would be the same limits would apply.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, just to clarify, this is part of the plan that the Haslams had completed and presented to City Council back in May, correct?
To the chair, to the councilman, that's correct.
Okay. And then according to this, we're getting a grant, or we're applying for a grant from ODOT, Jobs and Commerce Grant?
To the chair, councilman, that is correct. That process is going forward now, yeah.
So we have not received it yet? We just
Not
applied
officially.
for
I
it.
don't believe the finance department has officially taken receipt of the final grant, but it's being talked, the
All
paperwork
right,
is being completed.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, we don't have that 2.5 million yet, correct? As you're coming today before the council, we do not have that 2.5 million yet.
I don't believe it's 100% secured yet. I don't
Okay.
believe it's.
So the answer, Mr. Chairman, to the director is no. We don't have that secured yet.
It may be last week we received it, or this week we're going to receive it, but
Okay,
it's.
but we have not received official word from ODOT that we're getting the 2.5 million.
No, we received official work from ODOT that we were awarded $2.5 million
Okay,
for the project.
that's different. So we do have the 2.5, the 2.5 million has been awarded.
Correct.
We just haven't received it yet.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And then the other 2.5 is we're going out for bonds?
Correct, yeah.
The city of Cleveland is going out for bonds?
Correct.
And this is just to do a study, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then if this study comes back saying it's not going to be able to work, then we're out 2.5 million in bonds.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, to the director. Correct. Okay, and then this is just for looking at the bridge right outside the window here. It's not looking at, because according to this, it says it could impact current right-of-ways such as Route 2, Erie Side Avenue, West 3rd Street, East 9th Street, and Lakeside Avenue. So it's not looking for, does this study, Mr. Chairman, to the director, look at the possibility of just one potential bridge or a number of different bridges at different sites?
No, it's just going to study this particular bridge.
All right, just this particular bridge. It just says that it could impact those other areas as well.
Yeah,
somehow.
the study's going to look at how it impacts those. If
Right,
you
'cause
put a
if-
bridge, how does it impact those
Right, because
roadways?
if I recall from the May 17th meeting, you could possibly end Route 2 eastbound at East 9th or something, like you.
That's correct.
You,
That was
there's a
part of the
potential that you couldn't get from the east side to the west side via Route 2 anymore.
That's correct. That was
Okay.
one of the scenarios. That's right.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, how was Osborne Engineering Company chosen? Did this go out for an RFP, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
No, so this ordinance will allow for a direct award of this phase of the work to Osborne Engineering.
Okay. And Osborne Engineering, is there a possibility, Mr. Chairman, to the director, that they could win, if we decide to go forward with this, is there a possibility, Mr. Chairman, to the director, that Osborne Engineering Company could potentially win an RFP that later on goes out by the city?
So if we went into like another design phase, they would be able
Or
to bid on it?
construction of it or anything?
Yeah, well, they're an engineering firm, so I don't know, if they wouldn't necessarily do the construction part. But yeah, there'll be more, so once we finish the study and it's found to be, able to move forward, then we would start, official preliminary engineering.
Okay.
And that would, be competitively bid.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, and we don't know this, but you probably would, or, I'm sorry, I wasn't here when you were introduced. Is $5 million a little, a lot, or average for a study like this to happen?
This is a reasonable amount for this study. This is a large effort. It's going to take them some time. So, yeah, this is the appropriate dollar amount for the effort that's needed here on this project this size, which is, as you can see from the presentation, is a very large project.
Well, yeah, it's going to change the whole landscape.
Yeah.
And listen, trying to get out of a Browns game yesterday with only two ways out is not a fun thing to do. In the legislation that we have on our tablets, it indicates the department requests legislation to authorize the Director of Mayor of Capital Projects to apply, accept, and expend grants from ODOT and other grants and gifts. But yet, when our committee calendar came out, that's not what it said. In summarizing, it says it authorizes the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record for the right-of-way purpose real properties and easements. So why, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, does it say you could expend in one piece of legislation and not in the other piece of legislation? And which one is the official piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman, that we're hearing today? The one that has them with the ability to expend, or the one that has them without the ability to expend?
Through the chair, to the councilman, I'm not aware of the discrepancy you're talking about. You're saying that there's two different pieces of legislation that have been edited differently? I don't have that.
Yes. So the one you have in your hand does not have the word expend in it.
Correct.
The ones that's on our tablet has the word expend in it. So which one are we looking to
Well, we
pass
we
today?
would need to have, or I think the council would need to give us the authority to expend the funds. So we would have to have that authority. Otherwise, we would not be able to pay the consultants and the other entities that we have to engage with.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if we could check with our legal counsel.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Casey.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to our legal counsel, does the word is the word expend in the one that you're looking at right there?
The one attached to the administrative report. No, the summary on the legislative report indicates that it is for acquiring, accepting, recording, right-of-way purposes, real property and easement.
So it does not say expend.
Not in the summary, no, I'll check in the actual.
But in this legislation, but in this one. Right. He says
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Yes, Councilman Casey. Yeah, Councilman Casey, the original piece of legislation does not have expend.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I think that if we pass this piece of legislation today, once we receive the grant in hand, and then once the bonds have went out, we probably need to come back to the table to allow the administration to expend the money that is the $5 million. Because even in your legal, in what you have in your hand, Mr. Chairman, it does not have the word expend, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just know that we're not, if we pass this today, we're not giving the administration the authority to expend the money quite yet. We're just giving you the authority, Mr. Chairman, to the director, and I know Director Dumas is here as well, that we're only giving you the authority to accept the money, and then you'll have to come back to us to expend it.
Right, correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that known, Mr. Chairman, to the director, that once the bonds go out and then the money is accepted by the city, you'll have to come back with another piece of legislation to expend the money, and then you'll have to tell us how you're going to expend it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Is there any other questions? Councilman Mooney? All right, seeing no other questions, is there any objections to this piece of legislation? Ordinance number 683, 2021 stands approved. Next, we have ordinance number 684, 2021 by council members Polincic, Bishop, Brackatelli, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to issue one or more permits to Mon Dunes LLC to encroach into the public right-of-way of East 185th Street by using and maintaining existing asphalt pavement, fence, brick wall, and building canopy for their restaurant at the northwest corner of Villa View Road and East 85th. Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is a request to grant encroachment to private owners to occupy the public rights-of-way on East 185th Street for an ODOT-administered project. These encroachments are essential for the operations to their restaurant. We do have consent from Councilman Polensek for this encroachment.
All right. Okay, is there any questions from my colleagues on ordinance number 684, 2021? All right, seeing no further questions, ordinance number 684, 2021 stands approved. Okay, ordinance number 685, 2021, by council members Spencer, Bishop, Brackatelli, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority to encroach into the public right-of-ways of West 63rd Place, Cornea Court, and Lawn Avenue by installing, using, and maintaining a sanitary sewer force main from existing substation building to existing sewer along Lawn Avenue. Director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For security and health purposes, Greater Cleveland RTA needs to install a new restroom facility in the West 65th Street station. These encroachments are necessary for the installation of the new restroom facility in the sewer line, obviously. We do have consent from Councilwoman Jenny Spencer for this encroachment.
Okay, so Director, can you explain what they will do here?
So basically, they're going to put in a new restroom facility at this location, and then they have to, cross into the public right-of-way to get to the sewer outfall location. So we're going to give them the encroachment to do that.
Okay. All right. Councilman Brian Casey.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, can you just make sure that when they tear the street up, that the street is repaired back to, because I think 65th was just recently done, and if they're going to be tearing any of 65th Street up, and it may be a moratorium street,
Yes.
if you could make sure that it is restored back properly and there's not a utility cut sitting in the street for any length of time, be seeing how we're giving them permission to tear a moratorium street up.
Yes, sir. Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. Yeah,
All right.
they'll have to meet, if it's under moratorium, they have to meet the moratorium requirements.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other questions on 685, 2021? All right, seeing no more questions on 685, 2021, 685, 2021 stands approved. Ordinance number 690, 2021, by council members Bashir Jones, Bishop, Brackatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects and/or City Planning to enter into one or more contracts with Default LLC for professional services necessary to for the design, production, and installation of a yet-to-be-designed public art association with and installed at the renovated Kovacic Rec Center.
Yes,
All right, Director.
Mr. Chairman, yeah. The artist was recommended and selected by the Public Art Committee and approved by the City Planning Commission based on his qualifications and preliminary general conceptual idea, with the understanding that he would further develop that concept for the Kovacic Rec Center. Is understood he is expected to create an artwork inspired by the interested parties, which include, but not necessarily limited to, the city staff, the neighborhood residents, the council member, and other stakeholders of the project. The artists are hired through the Public Arts program, are normally hired based on specific concept that has been presented to and approved by the Planning Commission. In this situation, the Public Art Committee and the Planning Commission have determined that hiring Default LLC before a specific piece of artwork has been created was a preferred approach. This was in an effort to accommodate input from the community and to design the artwork that would be specific and appropriate to the rec center itself. The estimated cost for this is $64,000. And this is in Councilman Bashir Jones' wards. It should take, about 4 months for design and about 6 months to fabricate and install the artwork for the new rec center.
Okay. All right, is there any questions on ordinance number 690, 2021?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Brackatelli.
Thank you. Where is the funding coming from for this project?
The funding comes from the capital project itself, and per ordinance, public art is, I believe, 1.5% of the of the budget.
So this is part of the project
This is part of the project
cost
cost,
for the
yeah. Mhm.
renovation?
That's right.
That's the appeal. Okay, thank you.
The $64,000 would be that budget amount.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 690, 2021 stands approved. Ms. Bronze, is that all you have?
I have 693, 2021.
Okay. Resolution number 693, 2021, by council members Gray, Bishop, and Brackatelli, by departmental request, an emergency resolution declaring the intent to vacate a portions of Rawlings Avenue between 75th Street and East 79th Street, a portion of Holton Avenue between East 75th Street and East 79th Street, and a portion of 78th Street from the south line of Holton Avenue to the prolongation of the south lines of sublots 84 and 75 in J.H. Hardy subdivision. All right, Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the Department of Economic Development has been engaged in the acquisition and assembly of property in and around the area of Opportunity Corridor in order to make this property available for future development. Various independent parcels will need to be consolidated and certain streets need to be vacated. A consent from Councilman McCormick for these vacations and this consolidation has been approved.
You said Councilman McCormick.
It should be Councilwoman Gray.
Should be Councilwoman Gray?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have her consent?
Yes, I have it right here.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, they
All right.
made a typo on the legislation.
okay, Councilman Jones.
Mr. Chairman, to the Director, you're assuming this, what project are we looking to look at?
Through the chairman to the councilman, I don't know that. That would be a question for economic development that we would want to get their information on. I don't personally know that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, normally when the Director brings us a vacation, or vacation property is for a purpose, and I presume you don't know, you have no idea, even though you have the legislation, you have no sense of understanding what might be here? Mr. Chairman, to the Director?
Through the chairman to Councilman Jones, no, I have not met with the Director of Economic Development and asked him what the proposed development or what, and if any, if he has any interest in parties in acquiring this property. I do not know.
And Mr. Chairman, can we find out what will be potentially put here at this location? Ask the administration, can you come back and give us that information, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, to the
Yeah,
Director?
I can relay the message to Economic Development, sure.
Do you know what it's going to be?
I don't know what it's going to be. That's great. All right, Director, we want you to come back to it and give us that information from Councilman Jones, okay?
Yeah.
All right, is there any other questions on ordinance, on resolution number 693, 2021? All right, seeing no other questions, or resolution number 693, 2021 is approved. Is that all your legislation?
Yes, sir. That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick comment to the director.
All right, Director.
Just want to thank him and his team for all the hard work. There's a record number of projects I think folks don't realize that are being done through capital projects towards the end of this year. Just an amazing amount of work, and congratulations to your team for the ongoing effort of all the infrastructure and capital projects that are going on throughout our city. As we drive around the city these past few months, it's just been amazing to see all the good stuff that's going on.
Thank you, Councilman. Much appreciated. I'll pass the message on. All right, thank you.
All right, Director. Director Sprons. Don't forget to give me your phone. Yeah, I'll write it down. Okay, give it to the clerk.
Move, I can remove the mask? No.
Director Cox, how many pieces you got?
I think it's,
Three?
there are two pieces, one is a piece for council. Here's your answer. 659, 536, and 713, which is a council piece. That was
I don't have 536. I don't have 536.
You don't have 536?
No.
Okay, can I just, I'm sorry. The 536 was held by Council President Kelly during the Committee of the Whole. This was the grant for the African American Cultural Gardens, and there was a long list of amendments
Right.
that he wanted to have placed into the ordinance itself, and for the council members to read it and understand and say. But he said that he would just place it, and we would come back to the Committee of the Whole again. So that's why I don't know why we were starting all over.
All right, well, we don't have that.
Yeah, so so it just showed up on the agenda.
Well, he said it'd be heard tonight under suspension.
That's what he told us when.
That's
when
right. So
we
it's
at
going to be
the
heard
director
tonight under
conference. Yes.
suspension.
Okay, we'll just move on here with our agenda.
That'll be fine. Thank you, sir.
Okay, ordinance number 655, 2021, by council members Bishop and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into a concessions agreement for the operation of a food and beverage concession inside Cleveland City Hall for a one-year term with two one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the concession stand that's in the Citizen Center. It was operated for years by Ohio Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. Before that, it was operated by the Society for the Blind. This was years and years ago. The Department of Ohio of Opportunities for Disabilities were no longer able to find anyone to operate the stand. So what we're trying to do now is get some RFPs on the street to see if we can get someone that wants to bid on this operation and see what we do. We're going to do some nonprofits. We're going to go to some ADA compliant firms. We're going to put them out to everybody that we can. Again, this has always been operated by people with disabilities. So we're going to try to keep that same mode as we move forward when we go out for our RFPs.
All right, Director, what concession stand is this? This the one?
This
right
is in
down
the
by,
Citizen Center where you get the birth certificates.
Birth
It's the
certificates,
small.
okay.
I don't even know. I'm not going to say what we used to call it, but yeah. So because that's not politically correct
No.
anymore. So it is, but it was always operated by a Society for the Blind, and now it turned over to the Ohioans with Disabilities through the state. But they no longer could find anybody that was willing to operate it.
Okay. All right, is there any questions by anyone of my colleagues?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Brackatelli.
Thank you. I understand. I mean, it's a small stand.
Yes.
And we are currently operating under significantly different circumstances than we normally were. But when we were fully operational, the city of Cleveland had thousands of visitors on a pretty regular basis. One of the considerations that we talked about years ago that I had seen in other city halls were not just a concession stand, but also kind of a little bit of a retail stand. When we talk about folks who come in, may want to look at a book about the history of Cleveland or have some other opportunity to buy something related to Cleveland. Is there a consideration that this is just not food, but maybe a little bit of that other kind of visitor type of retail component, that somebody could buy some history books or maps or calendars or any of those kind of things that we have?
Mr. Chairman, to the council, at this time it was not. It was just a solely a concessionaire agreement. I think it's a great idea. I think, but it would have to get with a vendor that was qualified and able to also purchase that merchandise and sell and retail.
Director, can you
I'm sorry.
speak into the
I'm
mic
sorry,
there?
sir. Yes. So again, I said at this time we're not considering the process of vending other than the food and beverage things that they have in there. So, but it is a great idea if we get some vendors come in we can ask that question if they're able, because it's such a small operation.
It is a small space, yeah. But it's
such a
just
small space.
interesting that you can't pick up anything about Cleveland
Yes,
when
sir.
you
I
walk
understand.
in. Have bids gone out for this already, or is this still being formulated?
We have put the bids on the street.
Okay.
We have not received any back. I forgot the time. I'll get you the timeline of when they're due back. But we have not received them. We have not, there's a deadline, and I don't know that deadline right now, but we did put it on the street.
Okay, I think having that opportunity, if folks come back with that, because we do see that commonly, those kind of kiosks.
Sure.
And the previous vendors were actually pretty creative and having little roll-up carts that actually came outside of the
Yes, yes, sir.
facility.
Yes.
Which also makes it convenient for shopping if people are
Yes,
looking
sir.
at buying something besides Cheetos. When they come in, I think just having some kind of a little bit piece of tourism or history might be helpful. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Brackatelli. That was a great point. We needed something to talk about Cleveland in our story. All right, is any other questions on ordinance number 65? Oh, Joe Jones. I'm sorry, Councilman Joe Jones.
Mr. Chairman, just to expand off of the idea, I won't belabor the table on the concept. I think my colleague Anthony Brackatelli brought out something that was interesting. How do we create, a sense of not just only a historical perspective, but also expanding off of that. How do we look at and how we view our city and how people use City Hall? And I know that, we should even look at somewhere down the road how we make that first floor accessible to the public, with some kind of potentially expanding it to a food court. You bringing people in, they're engaged in the city, they're picking up information, and yet at the same time, they're getting to have the opportunity to come into City Hall and see this rich, vast wealth of a building and such a historical perspective on the city of Cleveland. It would be a really good look, Mr. Chairman, if there was some kind of vision crafted, like we sit here and we talk about how we make a bridge go from Mall Square C all the way over to the Brown Stadium. It would be nice to see how we can envision and reimagine citizens being able to have the opportunity to come to City Hall and spend some time and know its history.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Jones. All right, is any other questions on ordinance number 655, 2021? Seeing no other questions, 655, 2021 stands approved. Ordinance number 659, 2021, by council members Conwell, Hairston, Bishop, Brackatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute various deeds of permanent easements and deeds of temporary easements granting to the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District certain easements rights at or under certain parks for the NSRSD Shoreline Storage Tunnel Project and declaring the easement rights not needed for the city's public use, and authorizing an agreement with the NEORSD for compensation for the such easements and a gift of cash to provide replacement park improvements at the affected parks. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With me is Commissioner James DeRosa from Real Estate. He'll explain the project.
Mr. Chairman, so this ordinance relates to the Sewer District's Shoreline Storage Tunnel, and that's a project that's part of their Project Clean Lake, which is to minimize wastewater that goes into our lake and rivers. And so this particular project is a nearly 3-mile long, large diameter tunnel that will go underneath several city parks. Those parks are Forest Hills Park, Glenview Park, Sam Miller Park, Rockefeller Park, Gordon Park, and Gardena Park. And what's being requested here is the authority to grant 13 permanent easements and 10 temporary easements to the sewer district. Of the parks that I mentioned, there will be above-ground shaft sites, meaning that's where they can go from the top into the tunnel at Forest Hills Park and also Gordon Park. There will be a regulating structure at Gordon Park and Gardena Park, and all of the other parks that were mentioned would just be a subterranean easement, meaning deep under the ground, so that there would be no impacts at the surface. So typically, we sell easements to the sewer district, which is what we're doing here. The total value of the permanent and temporary easements is $547,400. What's a little bit unusual about this particular ordinance and request is that two of these parks are going to have more substantial impacts at the surface, and that would be Forest Hills Park and Gordon Park. And so typically, if there's impacts at the surface of a certain magnitude, the district will grant $100,000 to the property owner if the property owner is going to maintain any improvements at the surface, which, you know, these being city parks would be the case. So what's being proposed here, though, for Forest Hills Park is that in addition to that $100,000 that they would typically put in, they're proposing that they give us back an additional $400,000 of that easement purchase price, so that we would have a total of $500,000 to do park improvements at Forest Hills Park. And these improvements would be as the city has determined what we need, which would be to install basketball courts, a baseball facility, and then a play field at this park. And then in addition, there's Gordon Park, which will have impacts at the surface level. They're going to be doing certain improvements for us, meaning we've determined that we have the need for less tennis courts and more basketball courts, and so they're going to do some of that surface site work for us. And then the remaining $147,400 of the easement price would be designated for the city to spend on park improvements at Gordon Park. So the $147,400 plus the $400,000 at Forest Hills Park is the total purchase price of the $547,400. Plus, they're going to throw in an extra $100,000 for Forest Hills Park. So there's a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so Commissioner, how long will the surface impediments be there? How long will it take them to do that?
So it'll be around 24 months, so 2 years.
24 months.
However, Mr. Chairman, for instance, at Gordon Park, the baseball fields are not going to be affected. So we've worked with the sewer district over the last couple of years to keep their activities off of our most active portion of the park. So we've been careful about what we give them authority to close down for those 24 months.
If I may also add, we also talked to them about how they would come in and out of the park, so it's not affecting the rest of the park, and how they would get in. We're going to open up the driveway on the far east side that is closed now when you come off the ramp of Martin Luther King. We'll open that up for construction traffic to come through to Gordon Park, and make sure that they're not coming through 72nd Street to disrupt the ball fields and the baseball diamonds. We also, at Glenview, if you don't mind me adding, they put in a basketball court and a baseball diamond back for this other improvements. Glenview, we just opened up brand new renovated park. So there, we work very well with them, and they will do the things that we ask them to do to improve our parks when they get these easements. So.
Okay. All right, and I forgot what I was going to say. All right, if there's any other questions from my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman, allow you to.
All right, Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, did the city work with NEORSD and the Shoreline Storage Tunnel Project to determine what parks were going to be affected? And then, if so, how were Gordon and Forest Hills Park chosen?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we work with them when they start the project. Commissioner DeRosa starts. They know which way their shoreline is going, which way their operation is going. They've been working on a shoreline project for 2, 3,
Yeah, probably
about 2 or
at least
3
3 years.
At least 3 years.
Okay.
They've come through Glenview Park. They're going through Gardena, and they're now starting to come there so they can get down to the lakefront. So we do work hand in hand with them, James, myself, and our landscape architects, to make sure that we're all on the same page and that they work very well with us in getting these things done.
Right.
And they add these other entities that we ask them for. So,
All right. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, is it just Gordon and Forest Hills?
No, it's Forest Hills, it's Gardena, Gardena Park, which is off of St. Clair, north of St. Clair, over about 70-something.
Okay.
It's Gardena Park, and it is, what I missed, Glenview, Gardena,
Glenville
Forest Hill,
and Gordon.
And Gordon, yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, the councilman, the rest are all subterranean so that they're
not.
under the parks but no impacts.
There's no impact to the park space itself.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Joe Jones.
Mr. Chairman, this is a site location right now. Is this next to the lake, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
I'm sorry, sir, what are you
Is this
looking
next
at?
to the lake,
What are you looking
this
at?
project?
The project runs all the way from, I think, St. Clair, right, to the lake, and that's where Forest Hills Park is located on Arlington. They started over there, and they're going north, Mr. Chairman, to the council, to the lake.
All right, so the apartment units right now on this project is 167?
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
The project right now is 167 units with another 200 units to be built?
Mr. Chairman, there's no apartments.
There's no, yeah. That's not,
Yeah.
we're doing a Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer tunneling. It's a tunnel.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the wrong piece of legislation.
We'll
I was getting ready to
We take your
educate.
vote. We take your yes vote.
take that one next time.
That's why we missed this. All right.
All right, Councilman Jones, you got any other questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
To the director, have you notified or have you been in communication with all the councilmen that this project affects?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have, and also Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer reaches out to those council people on
Okay.
on the effect of these, our tunnel and what they're digging. So they reach out also.
Okay. All right, is any other questions? All right, with no other questions, ordinance number 659, 2021 stands approved.
Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Director DeRosa to just hang out for 1 second? This next one's quick.
This is a commissioner. He's not a.
Or Commissioner, I'm
He's giving me
sorry.
a promotion.
I'm sorry. Well,
You
who
gotta
knows
treat
who's the
commissioners
director and
a
who's the
little better,
commissioner
yeah.
now?
Yeah,
But
treat them.
if you could just hang out,
All right,
Commissioner, if
you
you
can
could,
just hold
please.
into it. All right.
All we know is that we got Chief Dumas in the room, and that's the only one that matters.
All right, ordinance number 713, 2021 by Councilmember Kelly. An emergency ordinance to change the name of the Ken Johnson Recreation Center to the Woodland Recreation Center. Director.
Mr. Chairman, this is a council originated piece. The administration does not have any issues with the changing of the name. As you know, that's where we came up out of Woodland Recreation Center. So it's going back to the original name.
All right, any questions? All right, no other questions. Ordinance number 713, 2021 stands approved.
Good.
All right, the Municipal Service and Properties Committee is...
Mr. Chairman, can we have miscellaneous with the director and the commissioner for 1 second?
Okay, go ahead. Councilman Casey.
Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner DeRosa, I just wanted to bring to your attention, it was right about a year ago that we passed a piece of legislation for West 140th for Cleveland Public Power and the lease of the property over there. And it was you wanted a 5-year, we gave you a 2-year. Do we have an update on the possibility of a purchase agreement over there or a new facility for Cleveland Public Power over at West 140th?
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, so we will be introducing legislation on September 27th, and it will be to renew the lease at the current location for an additional 24 months. If you recall, the landlord had given us an option, but it was amended at the table to come back to council to exercise that option. So as we go through that committee process, the director and myself can give updates on negotiations for a permanent home. It is a temporary, it's a 2-year extension, but I think we need to take a couple more steps in that direction before we discuss it at the council table, but happy to discuss it with you offline or when that legislation comes before the committee.
Okay, so there has been some progress somewhere, or at least you're continuing to look into the possibility of finding a permanent home for that service center over there.
Through the chairman of the councilman, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I know you guys get a lot of permits and stuff like that for uses of parks, et cetera. I'm going to ask as a courtesy for myself and the rest of my colleagues that if a permit is issued for an event in a park, especially on an off day, if you could please allow either yourself or licenses, or if you could relay the message to at least notify the council person that a permit has been issued and that an event is going to take place. There's been a number of pop-ups, I don't know what you want to call them, and you go out there and a permit has been issued and we don't know anything about it. So I don't know if that's your department or if it's licensed and assessed. I don't know who it is, but if we could just get notified of any permit that's issued in our ward that we don't have to sign off on, that would be greatly appreciated.
Mr. Chairman, we'll do what we have permits for. Mostly it's for shelters. We don't permit for other things, like food trucks or something in there. So we'll send you permits for the shelters.
Okay.
That
All
we
right.
have in.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Also, Director, I received a request or a complaint about the porta potties at Luke Easter Park. When we had an event up there, one resident said that it was they were they were not very clean at all. So if we can pay some attention to details when we have our festivals and we have our events on the east side, mainly. They said the west side is good, but I'm not sure how she knew that. But yeah, but she said, all right. Also, Director, before we go, Director Dumas, did you want to come to the table, Director Dumas? Chief Dumas? Okay, all right. I got one more question from Councilman Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I received complaints concerning the playground over in the neighborhood and want to see what will it take to update that playground. And that's over here in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood off of Spears Avenue, which is off of Kinsman.
Spear Playground, Mr. Chairman.
That's correct. And so a number of the neighbors were talking about how outdated and outmoded the equipment is, and the benches are, are made out of wood, and it's got splinters on it, and just how rocky everything is over there. And just seems like that neighborhood has been forgotten in terms of a number of issues of services. So I was wondering, when can we look at getting that done?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, Spear Playground it sits right next to a home. It's a pocket park. It's a corner. I don't think it's ideal for children to be playing in that park because there's no guard. It sits at 140th and Spear, 145th and Spear, and there's no stopping kids from running out into the streets. The equipment is very old. It was one of those what they call we call those tot lots that we threw up in the 70s, and on a corner in a lot in vacant lots. It's not very safe. If one day you want to meet me out there, we can have a conversation. But it's not a very safe place to have a park. Right. And it sits right next to a person's home.
Right, so the citizens are concerned in that area. We're hearing what you're saying, they, respectively disagree. So they would like to see something down there at the park. And I can recall that when I served on the council before, council members received their own allotment for park improvements in their respective neighborhoods. So when you look at the parks in our area, how much have we invested into park equipment in the Lee Harbor Ward 1 area? I know we did a big project at Carouge Park some years ago. There was an allocation that was left when I left, I think about 1.2 to 1.7 million.
Yes, sir.
And so now the issue is, I know those funds have been spent,
Yes,
but what pool of resources do we have for that area?
Well, let me say this, that, in my tenure as Parks Director and now as Public Works Director, we've done Arthur Johnson Park, renovated Arthur Johnson Park over in Miles Heights. We've done Carouge. We're not doing Frederick Douglass with the $17, $18 million rec center and park improvements in the back. So we've done those. I'm trying to think what else we've done in Ward 1, but we've done a lot of work in Ward 1. I think this capital program that we've put together has been very well received, but it's also given us a lot of flexibility on what we do and how we do over our 3 to 5 year plan. So if you're talking about parks in Ward 1 alone, I could get that number for you over the years, but I think we have a good plan on how we move forward and rating the parks, the need improvements, and making sure that we have prioritized those parks.
And it would be good to see that, for our area. And then one of the concerns I have also is that we have the overheads, and some of the shingles are missing on them, which the water comes in and it rottens the wood, and eventually it deteriorates. So, and we're talking about.
We also did Carouge Park, too.
Yeah, we're talking about Carouge Park.
Yes, we did
So
Carouge.
that when those
Thank you for reminding me.
shingles come off of the canopies, do we have some way we can go and maintain that and keep that up?
I can, Mr. Chairman, to the council, I can get them to look at those shingles, see what it'll cost us to get that into our capital repair program, and see where we got leaks at. We have the same issues. I was at Luke Easter a couple of Saturdays ago, and I was looking at the shelters, and
I was there too.
Yes, we need some cleanup and some shelters we need to look at. So I will talk to capital projects about how we look at those and see what we can get cost on it, get it into a project. Okay, so we will look, and I'll look at Spear and see where we're at. Okay.
Right, and it would probably be the best thing is to have the neighborhood listen to what you're talking about.
That's fine.
And have a community meeting so they get to understand exactly what's what.
I just don't. It's just so small, and kids can run out in the street and there. It just scares me. That's me. I'm old.
Right.
So that scares me.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right.
All right. Okay, the Municipal Service and Properties Committee is hereby adjourned.
Seems like it's getting stuck, but they're coming off pretty easy.